of the Cultural Awareness Programs Committee, and the topic course is best conveyed in a parable that I'd like to share with you right now. It's about a rabbi and his students. It goes like this. Once there was a rabbi who was asked by his students, "Teacher, how should one determine the hour when night ends and day begins?" And the rabbi asked, "Well, what do you think?" One student suggested, "Is it when one can distinguish a dog from a sheep in the distance?" And the rabbi said, "No." Another student guessed, "Then is it when we're able to distinguish a date tree from a fig tree in the distance?" And the rabbi said, "No." And the students said, "Then please tell us, when is it? When will we know when night has turned into day?" And the rabbi said, "It is when you can look into the face of a stranger and see your brother or sister. Until then, night is still upon us." It is with that notion, that feeling, that we present these programs. So it gives you an opportunity to experience other cultures, to learn something about other cultures, and also for the simple enjoyment of learning something about cultures. So we hope that you enjoy yourself today. I'm very happy that our president, our vice president, I should say, Dr. John Williams, shares in our commitment to cultural awareness on our campus and in our community. It's my great pleasure to introduce him to you today. Would you please help me to welcome Dr. John Williams. Let's get this up here for you.
Wow. Thank you very much. Good morning. It truly is a pleasure and an honor for me to welcome you to San Joaquin Delta College. On behalf of the administration, the faculty, and all of our students, I'd like to welcome you to our first Cultural Awareness Program of the 2002 academic year. I'd like to just say to you that I recently went through an interview. We were interviewing for the Vice President of Business. One of the candidates had shared with us an important thing, I think, as far as I'm concerned. It kind of struck me. He indicated that he had an individual on his staff where his father had visited the campus. His father was from Ireland. And the father, as you know, Ireland is kind of, there's not a lot of diversity in Ireland. The father came to this city and he was just in awe. He was amazed, just like I am now, because he said, "Wow, this must be what it's like in heaven, to have so many different faces, so rich individuals that are different, the diversity." He was so impressed with. And for your information, we highly value our diversity here at Delta College. It is very important to us. We recognize the importance, if you will, of cultural awareness programs, and the college has a strong commitment to nurture and also to support these programs. And I'm so glad that you came. I know that you will have a very, very wonderful, beneficial, and rewarding event today. And I think that it is important that we all recognize when we go back that this is just not a program. This is reality. This is life. What we need to do is value one another, because we are all important. And we all have something to contribute, and we all are different. I know that some of you probably like ice cream. As you can see, I love it. But when I go, I'd like to go to 31 flavors, and if they had 51 flavors, I'd like to go there. Because one flavor is just not enough for me. You can get some that it's real tangy. some a little tart, some a little darker than others, some lighter, but it's also good. And I think that this is what we represent here. We all have value, we all have worth, and I think that it's really important. And I'd like to recognize and appreciate those individuals, those CAP members, those members that have worked so hard to put this program on. First of all, I'd like to introduce, if they're here, but recognize them, of course, past members of the CAPS committee: Mario Moreno, Rosalind Gottfried, June Gillum, Florence Quillentang, John Brito, and Cheryl Diamond. Those were past members. Won't you just help me give a... The continuing members are Pedro Dromidas, David Farrell, Cynthia Gatlin, Marianne Cox, and Vicki Marie. The new members are Telly Giminetti, Nelson Nagai, Joanne Cataldo, Randy Gaines, our student ASB president here at San Joaquin Delta College, Angela McDonald, and Pile Reen Pilake. Now it's time for me to bring forth the individual that's going to introduce our very special guest. It's one of our students, and I'd like to introduce her at this time, Tiffany Carl.
Hello. Superior, higher in space, order, and rank. Greater in quality or value, showing feeling of being better than others. Hitler believed he could create a race higher and of more value than all others. He believed he could create a superior race. His idea was to eliminate the Jewish as well as others who did not fit the Aryan criteria. It seems impossible, unbelievable, the inglorious acts these human beings did to other human beings. However unreal it appears, the horrifying reality remains: 6 million Jews and 5.5 million non-Jews were tortured in death camps. My name is Tiffany Carl. I'm a student at Delta College. I'm here today to introduce to you an extraordinary individual, a survivor of the Holocaust, and a social activist. She is here today to speak to us about the persecution of Jews, her personal encounters, and her enduring survival amongst 6 million Jews sentenced to death. Elane Norych Geller was born in a small town in Poland. She was tortured for 5 years in the Nazi death camps, as were her father, mother, sister, 2 brothers, grandparents, and many aunts and uncles. In honor of Miss Geller, March 8th of every year is proclaimed as Elane Norych Geller Day at Delta College. Before Miss Geller comes out, I'd like to leave you with a quote by Maya Angelou. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, and if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Will everyone please join me in welcoming Miss Elane Norych Geller.
It's a pleasure and an honor to be back at Delta. In fact, I've been here so often, guys, that somebody in the back there saw me and said, "Do you have a room here by now?" It's the truth. I am honored to be here. And again, in the back, I was speaking with some people and I said, you know, I thought I would be doing this for about 6 months to a year. And the world, the way it is today, seems to be calling on people like me more and more. So I'm going to give you my testimony in a very few minutes, but not before I say some things that I think make, well, at the very least, they make me more comfortable. But if they help you to understand the spirit in which I am here today, then I think it's important. As you heard in this lovely introduction, I was imprisoned for almost 5 years. I am one of the youngest survivors of the Holocaust. Be aware that the average age of a Holocaust survivor today is 83. 83. And sociologists tell us that 100 of us die daily. So it is clear that the next 10 or 15 years will be the end of an audience such as you being able to speak with someone like me about the things that occurred. And speak we will, I hope. There will be time for questions at the end. Why would somebody in their right mind travel throughout this country and repeat again and again information that is so painful and personal, and for someone like me becomes more painful as the years go by, as the survivor community shrinks? I am now very much aware of that. It is very difficult for me to hear a survivor say to me, "We talk about the Holocaust and you teach the lessons and you must do this always." I need to go to a higher place. I believe that racism, anti-Semitism, bigotry, hatred of any kind, is as catching, as contagious as AIDS and any other communicable disease. I am here not to teach you to hate anybody. I'm here about prevention, about recognizing the disease early on, and perhaps, at the very, very least, say something, if nothing else. Be aware, please, that the world was silent when this was going on. People knew, they didn't know all the details, but it wasn't PC to help Jews. And so, it is in the spirit of prevention that I stand here before you. I want you to know right off the bat that I do not like everybody. It's the truth. And guess what? Shock. Not everybody likes me. But I swear to you, I would defend with my life the right of every single human being to be treated equally in the eyes of the law. You don't like me, it's not a problem. I prefer that you would, but if you don't, it's okay. But do not deny me my rights to live in a community, in a country, in a world where everyone is treated equally in the eyes of the law. Equally in the eyes of the law. I was imprisoned for almost 5 years, from age 4 till well past 8, simply and only because I happened to be born a Jewish child. Who were the persons that did this? Because it would be very much easier for you to hear my testimony, which follows in a couple of minutes, if you thought that the people that did such terrible things were lowlife, were gangs, were uneducated, uncivilized. Turn that all around, quite the opposite. Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you that for your decency, for your sense of justice, for your sense of right and wrong, perhaps you have to go to a higher place within you. The people that did this were considered to be the most civilized, educated, erudite people in Europe, if not the world. I believe from personal experience that if you pollute ethically and spiritually and morally, you become part of the dirt and part of the pollution. I can tell you right now that if anybody in this audience tried to hurt one of my children, I would kill you if I could, if you were killing my children. So isn't it therefore in all our vested interest to do something about prevention before it gets to that polluted state? Now, there are exceptions to everything I'm about to share with you. That's part of what I'm about. Certainly there were some good Germans. There were some good Poles. There were some good white Americans that helped black America during slavery. Does that mean those issues are gone? We need to be sensitive. We are not going to make this world perfect. It is our job to continue trying. It is our job to be on the journey. The racists, the bigots, the neo-Nazis, the white supremacists, the skinheads, there'll always be some form of that kind around. The challenge that we have is, will they become a small minority who meet secretly in dark rooms and drawn curtains, or will they be mainstream society? That is our challenge. Perfection is something we're going to work on the rest of our lives. Now, born in a small town in Poland, a place called Wodzisław. The town had in it about 4,500 people. Close to 4,000 of them were Jews, and 4,500 people, almost half, 2,000 people were Jews. It was not the Middle Ages. We knew this madman was loose. We know that war is bad for everyone. We knew it would be worse for us. Why? Because Hitler did not invent anti-Semitism. He simply perfected it to a science. We were persecuted before Hitler, so we knew it would be worse for us. And so, 6 million of us were murdered, but the plan was to murder 11 million, to make Europe Judenrein, clean of Jews, zero Jews, and in that spirit, no Nazi soldier ever had to ask permission to kill a Jew. The aim was zero. If you killed a Jew, you were helping out the cause. 5.5 million, these numbers, by the way, do not include soldiers. 5.5 million non-Jews, gypsies, gays, political dissidents, Jehovah's Witnesses, anyone that did not go along with the plan to build a master race. The ideal was tall, blonde, and blue-eyed. None of us, most assuredly most of us, would be a candidate for life in this room. Tall, blonde, and blue-eyed, a master race. We all know what Hitler looked like. Hardly the prototype, but perhaps when you're filled with so much hate and anger and ambition and evil, maybe when you look in the mirror you see what you want to see, not what's really there. And so my family consisted of mother and father, 2 older brothers, an older sister. I was the youngest. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, everything I hope and pray is in your life, has been, continues to be. Various Jews throughout Europe tried to protect those most vulnerable in their family. The very old, the very young, the disabled. In my family, that was me. I was the youngest. My father hired a young seminarian to tutor me at age 4 in the kinds of things that a child would need to know in order to pass as a Christian child in that community. If we'd lived in a larger city like Warsaw or Krakow, we could blend into the wall. But a small town in Poland. Poland is an extremely devout and religious country. Has been throughout its history. A child of 4, if she was going to pass as a Christian, needed to be taught and prepared, and indeed I was. This young seminarian my father hired taught me children's Bible stories and little hymns that a child might learn in the New Testament. I was given false papers, a false birth certificate, a false baptismal certificate, an arrangement made with a Christian family in our community that if the Nazis came into our town, I would be taken to this Christian home left there till the war ended. At the end of the war, whoever was left would come and claim me. Now, many of these arrangements were carried out exactly as planned, and many were not. As we survivors are getting older and older, some of us have already gone to the next world, not being 1,000% sure that the child we left behind wasn't either turned over to the SS when we were moved out of the town. Sometimes the family became very fond of the child, baptized it, converted it, hid it from the Jewish family member when they came to claim it after the war. Both scenarios are equally true. And so the day came. The Nazis marched into our town. They started out by rounding up all the Jews on their knees in the town square. That was not my first memory. Mine was my father putting on this 4-year-old an enormous amount of clothing, so many dresses I could barely put my hands down. He also took off my earrings. It was not unusual at all for Nazi punks to grab a Jewish woman running and pull on her earlobe without ever breaking her stride. A child wasn't even a challenge. All they had to do was reach out. And so, once my father put all these clothes on me, he and I started to walk towards the Christian home as the rest of the community was being gathered. And on the way, my father noticed here and there a door would open up with what appeared to be the head of a household with a small child at his side, would walk the child up to the SS and say something like, "I don't know who this is, it's not my child. It must be a Jewish child that wandered in here by mistake." And that's all it took. The child, the accompanying Jewish adult, shot, killed right in front of everybody. As an example, they were not to be messed with or disobeyed. The family of the child located in the center of town and killed, same way, same reason. And the Christian family punished as well. But not the same way, I promise you, not the same way. Once my father saw this betrayal, he instantly changed his mind, decided to keep me with him, to gamble. He and I turned around, walked towards the center of town to locate and join the rest of the family. It took about 20 to 30 minutes, and by the time we got there, 2 of my uncles were already dead. My father's youngest brother had a loaf of bread under his arm, and in the bread, he stuffed some jewelry, earrings, a ring, some small items of value. We were not allowed to bring anything into these camps. We were not permitted to do so. We needed something to be used later on for a bargaining chip, for a favor, for a crust of bread. And so we became very, very creative. People stuffed jewelry into bread, put items of value in the hems of their clothes. My uncle's bread fell. It hit the ground. The SS saw the jewelry. They shot him, his brother-in-law, right away. One of the bunches around us, people pulled out of the community, small clusters of people, to help in our own death and demise and destruction. Strong-looking men dug ditches for mass graves. People shaved hair. People took gold out of inlay. And for that, maybe, they got an extra crust of bread. The caloric intake of a Holocaust prisoner, 400 calories a day, doesn't matter what these calories consist of. You can't live very long on 400 calories a day. It was, in fact, a diet designed for death, for attrition. 200 calories at night and in the morning, consisting of a triangular piece of Schwarzbrot, black bread, and some dirty water that was to pass the soup. I officially never got any food. You got food if you worked, if you were counted. I didn't work, I wasn't counted. My aunt shared her food with me, and I had other ways, as you'll hear in a moment. One of the groups, however, very close to where we were being shot at People were screaming, bleeding, dying, and falling down. In that group, my grandparents and my mother. My grandparents were very elderly. The old would need help to get on a transport truck to be driven elsewhere for more efficient killing. Why bother? They took these people, they shot them right into ditches, dug by Jews who looked strong enough to do it. And we watched. My mother, I was told, was recovering from extremely minor surgery. Here again, they weren't going to put her on a gurney, take her to a hospital, get her well, and then kill her. Why? As soon as that massacre was over, as soon as it was over, we were quickly moved out of the center of town to a small holding camp not too far away. The camp surrounded by electrified barbed wire. We were given armbands with yellow stars of David on them, and that moment was the very moment of the end of our freedom. Different family members sent to different work camps, death camps. You had no idea where they were going. You certainly didn't know if you'd ever see them again. My 16-year-old sister sent to a place called Auschwitz, where at 16, she died in the ovens of Auschwitz, simply and only because she was a Jew. Dummies and uneducated people don't make blueprints for ovens and gas chambers and crematoria. It takes an educated architect to do that. You must always study history in the ambiance, in the atmosphere in which it occurred. Auschwitz. A Holocaust survivor needs to explain Auschwitz. Hitler tried twice to get into office. Lost the first time, won the second time. It was a time in Germany when the economy was almost zero. There were no jobs. Kids couldn't find a way to go to college. People couldn't find work, and it was perfect. Perfect. Still works today for scapegoating. The Jews, the Jews, the Jews, get rid of the Jews, and things will be better. Well, they did get better. Places like Auschwitz pop up. Out of nowhere, the people in the surrounding area could see the smoke of Auschwitz, unlike September 11th. Belching out smoke that smelled of human flesh burning. And suddenly they had jobs. They were making pillows out of human hair, jewelry out of gold inlay, fertilizer out of our bones, and nobody asked, what's going on over there? Where are these jobs coming from? The same thing in the cities. German businessmen bid on huge government contracts for Cyclone B gas, barbed wire, striped cloth. They didn't ask either, and things were getting better. Next, my aunt, my father's sister. It is largely due to her care and the coincidence that we remained together that I survived. She never had any children of her own. One of the uncles killed in the beginning, her husband. She always claimed to be my mother, very dangerous thing to do. Often the Nazis would say, mothers and children, you're going to a Kinderheim, a children's home. Why did they say it that way? That too was well thought out. They said it that way because they knew if they'd go up to a young mother and grab her toddler, her infant, there would be screaming and crying and hair pulling. They said, these are not stupid women. We'll tell them they're going to a children's home. They will leave teenagers behind, as old as some of you in this audience, hoping that you looked older, that you might pass as an adult, that you might live one more day. Every day that you lived, there was a hope that there would be yet another day. But I was 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. We couldn't survive on our own. These mothers took their babies, their children, and went to what they thought was a children's home, and most of the time they went to the ovens and gas chambers of the Holocaust. My aunt always claimed to be my mother. She and I sent to a small coal mining town, not too far away. Poland is a very small country. My father desperately tried to track us. Any prisoners, new prisoners that came in, did you see my daughter? He would describe us, my sister. Of course, if they knew the family, that helped. And he located my Aunt Nine Stekachin, Annie somehow arranged for her to be snuck out in the middle of the night, and I was thrown over electrified barbed wire onto a large transport truck filled to the top with coal. Both my aunt and I, buried under that coal, told not to cough, not to sneeze, not to make any noise. All vehicles during wartime are inspected with enormous searchlights. And miraculously, we were reunited with my father and brother very, very briefly. Then all 5 of us sent to a slave labor camp called Skaržisko. The camp had many sections in it. Once we got to that camp, I had no idea where my father and brothers were. They could have been in the same camp in another section, another camp in another country, or they also could have been dead. I had no idea. My aunt put to work in a munitions factory, and for some bizarre reason, there were 12 or 13 other very, very small children there. We don't know exactly why we were allowed to be. We're guessing. The officers might have missed their own children. It might have made them feel more human. In any case, we were not a problem. If they wanted to get rid of all of us, some of us, 2 of us, they could have done so. They didn't need permission. Nevertheless, our caregivers always gave us instructions. My aunt left for work for almost 5 years. When I'm not with you, stay in the barracks. Hide if you hear footsteps. Don't be in anybody's face. I obeyed her. I wouldn't be here this afternoon with all of you. When I didn't, I got into trouble, and I'll explain. During this almost 5-year period, I had typhoid, typhus, tuberculosis, punctured eardrums, never, ever, ever treated in a so-called infirmary. What do you think they would do with a Jewish child if you brought it to an infirmary? Why would they get me well? They were going to kill me anyway. I had lice and rats in my hair. I stole. I ate toothpaste. I drank urine. I did whatever was necessary to fill my belly and stay alive. Many times when a few of us children would wander out, we were told to hold hands and look up as they hung rows and rows of people and laughed while we children cried. One time when I walked out, a couple of SS soldiers looked at me, looked at each other for fun, said, "Look at this hair. It's too pretty for a Jewish child," and shaved me bald. My aunt came back from work and started to cry because she could barely recognize me. For crying, they beat her in front of me with a large rubber hose over and over again. Lots of times when I would wander out, again for fun, they would address enormous packs of German shepherds, talk to the dogs as though they were human and I was the dog. Mensch, beiß dem Hund. Persons bite this dog. And I was attacked and chewed on and bitten and mauled. And I begged, I pleaded, I cried, and eventually they called the dogs off. The physical scars are well healed. The emotional scars are not. I swear to you, I go nowhere that I do not make absolutely certain that the pet you own and love and I hope treat well is behind a locked door. When I'm confronted with a loose animal, I have a flashback. I become once again that child of the Holocaust, begging and pleading and crying for mercy. As you can imagine, a sense of embarrassment follows, a fear. Sometimes it takes me very long before I wander out of my home comfortably. Other times it takes just a few minutes. Next, my aunt and I were packed into cattle cars, railroad cars, box cars. The conditions are beyond description. All of your bodily functions, all of them, performed right where you were standing. What I remember most of all and will not ever forget, my aunt's screams as she pleaded and begged and feared, real or not, and asked the other inmates not to eat me alive. And that train was taking us to a place called Bergen-Belsen, where a young woman and her sister Anne Frank and her sister Margot died within 3 or 4 weeks of arrival and liberation. The trains always stopped a good distance outside the barracks. It was winter time. We marched on this ground that was solid ice. They were just beginning to lose the war. They were killing beyond randomly. If you stopped to help somebody or to help yourself, if they caught you, In their eye view, you were gone. They wanted no witnesses. They wanted no Elane, Norych, Geller at Delta, or any place else for that matter, to speak to what really happened. And so, arriving in these barracks, we were with frozen feet. My feet were so badly frozen, my aunt would stick her fist in my mouth. When they began to thaw out, it's very painful. Women from all over Europe were arriving. Most of them had already lost their family, and most assuredly their children. This child didn't care. I would go up to these different nationals. I would ask them to teach me a children's song in their own language, like Frère Jacques, or London Bridge, or something like that. Then I'd go off into a corner and practice it. When I thought I knew the song well, I'd go back to the woman who taught me the song. With my hand open, I would sing to her. She was crying. She needed the food more than I did. I didn't care. I took it, and I never looked back. My aunt and I were freed and liberated by the British in Bergen-Belsen. One of my brothers survived in a place called Buchenwald. The other of my brothers and father survived in another country, in Czechoslovakia, in a place called Theresienstadt. At the moment of liberation, of course, none of us knew that the other had survived. That came about 2 months later. We were taken into refugee camps. We needed medical attention. Most of all, what we needed, most of all, is to find a way to get off German soil. And of course, the churches, the synagogues, the Red Cross, the newspapers, they all came into these camps, took down ads. We all gave them ads. We didn't even know names, we gave them ads. An ad placed by one of my brothers read, "I am Jacob Norych, son of Israel Mordechai Norych, looking for family anywhere." Believe it or not, my father actually had a brother in Brooklyn, New York. His last name no longer Norych. It was now Warshawski. Immigrants that came to Ellis Island in those days, it was very messy bureaucratically, took the same last name, made one step a tad easier. My uncle reads this ad in a Yiddish newspaper on a Sunday morning, paper called The Forward, still in print, recognizes the town, the family name, and raises heaven and earth to quickly get us off German soil, so that the 5 of us arrived in the United States on the very first boatload of refugees to come out of the Holocaust. That was in May of '46. I entered kindergarten the following September, 4.5 years behind grade level. I'd never been to school, I didn't speak a word of English, and started our lives here. Before I take your questions, a couple of quick things. The 5.5 million non-Jewish souls, make no mistake, as special, as missed, as grieved for, as mourned as the Jewish souls. But we have to be historically accurate when we're testifying to history. Only the Jews were targeted for genocide. Only the Jews. They said the rest they were going to fix. That's the one question I can't even tell you. I can't even attempt an answer. I don't know what they meant by it. Those souls are gone. I have taken my anger, my passion, and become an activist. I think it's the only way to go. The more freedom we have, the more responsibility we have, the more ways to be upset and angry. Become an activist. Do not give your enemy, as I wouldn't give mine, the great pleasure of being anything but decent. For me to become a criminal would be to give Hitler a posthumous victory. Don't even go there. I'm not ever going to do that. Yes, guys, I've had therapy. It's okay to ask about it. Usually people apologize for 5 minutes before they ask. I do not understand how you can be an anti-Semite, a racist, a bigot, a neo-Nazi, a hateful human being, and believe in an all-seeing, all-knowing, all-powerful higher power. What is this these people are thinking? That this higher power looked down one day and said, oops, made blacks, whites, Asians, Hispanics, all kinds of ways to worship. I made a mistake. I'll call on the Jerry Springer crowd to help me clean up my act. I don't think so. The job is ours. It's ours. We do not have to be angels, but we cannot be silent. And the journey that you take to make this a better world benefits you immediately. And I invite you to think critically. When somebody says to you, all Jews are this, all blacks are this, all Asians or Hispanics are this, and you don't open your mouth and say, I don't know all these people. I will judge people by how I experience them one-on-one. Words are powerful, guys. Remember the words of Jesus and Moses and Dr. King and Mother Teresa and Shakespeare are going to live long, long after you and I are gone. I can make you sing with words. I can make you cry with words. Go to war with words. End in therapy with words. Words are powerful. Be careful how you use this precious gift. Thank you. I'll take your questions. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's talk. And there is no such thing. I am very happy to see some very young people here, very young, younger than the college students. So there. There is no such thing as a foolish question, guys. That's the only way to learn.
And there are 2 microphones that are set up, one on this side and one on the adjacent side. So please feel free to come forward and talk to Ms. Geller.
Yes.
Ms. Keller, do you find the need for ongoing therapy at intervals, or is it on a continuum?
Did you happen to know, this is my calendar, it's as I need it at this point, but it's been extraordinarily helpful.
And very intensive, I would think.
Yeah.
How long are your sessions? 1 hour, 2, 3?
Oh, I wish it was a day, but it's an hour.
Ah, I see. It's an hour once a week, twice a week?
At this point, whenever I feel the need.
So it's become less and less as you've worked out the issues.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Yes. What would be your
wait a minute. I'm going to ask those leaving to leave quietly because this is very important, so we need to hear.
What would be your advice to a young student or misled, uneducated child that strays towards the Nazi belief or like the skinhead? What would you tell them?
Well, you all heard the question, right? Yes. What would I say? You're going to be very surprised when I say this. I do not approach anybody to change them. If that young person were to come to me, I would suggest some things to read. Well, it would depend why they were coming to me. I've had neo-Nazis and revisionists. By the way, the revisionists say this didn't happen. Do you all understand that virtually 95% or more of what the world knows about the Holocaust comes from Nazi records, guys? But if the child came to me to convince me of the good of their ways, I have nothing to say to them. If they said, you know, I'm beginning to rethink, then I would talk to them about reading. I would try to mentor them, absolutely. Because what is the reason why a young person would join a hateful group? Sometimes out of sheer loneliness. Those are the most vulnerable amongst us.
Thank you.
Hi. What did your father's brother change his name to? The last name?
Warshawski. And don't ask me how to spell it, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Just do it phonetically, because I speak several languages. I spell poorly in all of them. I do not have that gene.
Thank you.
I'm going back and forth. Yes.
Forgive me for it may be an inappropriate question, but do you still hate the Germans?
It's not only not an inappropriate question, it's a very important question. Do I still hate the Germans? The Germans, no. The Nazis, yes. Now, this will take a minute. Stay where you are. Stay where you are. Don't leave. Okay. I need to explain that because I've been called on that a number of times, and it's a very important question. Judaism does not, as I understand, the Christian way is to forgive the sinner. We don't work that way. I'm not empowered to forgive on behalf of someone else. If the Nazis that pushed my sister into the ovens of Auschwitz meet her in the next world, ask for her forgiveness, she forgives them, I'm okay with that. But does that mean we walk around hating? We also do not believe in communal guilt. The sins of the father are not upon the children. I correspond with German students that I've met. I've had them to my home, Austrian, German. So no, I have not forgiven the Nazis. But the sins of the father are not upon the children, and I judge people as to how I experience them, by the words they use.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If I'm mistaken, then please correct me, but my question is...
Do you doubt that I will?
No, I don't.
Okay.
But my question is, in your opinion, why did they allow half Germans and half Nazis to survive?
Oh, no, it's a very appropriate question. You mean after the war?
Or while they were taking the Jewish people, why would they say, if you're half German, you're okay? If that's
not true.
In fact, what they did not.
No, listen, this is very important. If you had a drop of Jewish blood in you, you were impure. Listen to me, this is also important. Well, I'm in a college, why am I so marveling about this, you know? During the Spanish Inquisition, we Jews could convert to Christianity and maybe save our lives. To plug up that loophole, the Third Reich, Hitler declared Judaism a race. Are we a race? No, we're not. We're a religion. So why? Because anybody in this room can be any religion they want to be. You can change your religion, for heaven's sake. You can't change your race. So no, if you were impure by their standards, you were gone. There was no excuse. In fact, let me just take 1 minute. This is important. You know, nobody does this alone. You fundraised before. In the early 20s, 500 black women were murdered. Why? What were they doing in Germany? Probably married to young German soldiers who were idealistic. They met them in Africa when they were stationed there. Said, of course that's not a problem. We are advanced thinking people. Writers died. These 500 black souls were gone. And a lot of people, before the war was declared. The war was declared in 1939. These are the early 20s. Now, you think Hitler did this alone? He had help. If you've ever traveled in Europe, you know you cannot go from one country to another without being stopped for passports and visas and God knows what else. Trainloads of Jews were being taken to death camps in the middle of the night, passing border after border. So this was a well-planned thing. Nobody in this room. Do you think if he had killed 11 million Jews, you think he would have stopped there? The next victims were well-planned, I assure you.
Yeah, are you the last survivor of your family?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
And that's a problem, too.
Yeah.
It's a lonely problem.
Were they active? Activists?
No. My brothers were quite a bit older than I. My father and aunt both remarried in this country and lived here for many years. What the sociologists tell us that, and first we didn't talk about it at all, even amongst ourselves. Then we talked about it amongst ourselves, wanted to grieve, and now there aren't enough of us left to speak. My brothers could barely look at me without crying. They couldn't believe that they lived through this and that I, their kid sister, had to go through it. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm kind of nosy.
Go ahead.
But during that walk with your father, when he was intending to drop you off with the Christian family,
Right.
what, if any, did you speak about?
I was 4 years old. You give me so much honor and credit. I did what my father told me to do. I assure you he didn't speak to me about anything. He probably, if anything, instructed me to obey these people and to be a good girl. I was 4 years old. I didn't have the intellect with which to have a conversation about the ominous situation we were in.
No words were passed? Like,
None that I remember, just a quiet walk.
Ms. Geller, because of all the trauma that you went through, did you have to overcome any learning disabilities or speech problems or anything of that sort?
What do you think? No, it's a very good question. I'm fairly phobic about some things. And you know, when sometimes I speak to, a lot of the times, I speak to children in LA. We have many cultures, many, you know, sometimes there are 3 interpreters. There'll be a Korean, a Spanish, a Russian. I cannot even tell you how much I would urge these children to learn the language. Because the insecurity of this being my second, third, and fourth, whatever language, I am insecure about writing, although I'm told that I must, and lots of other things. I absorb everything. 9/11, as we were all traumatized. I'm not the only one. It's been very traumatic since then for me. Yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
I was wondering, after your freedom, after you moved over to America or throughout your years, did you ever meet with any Nazis, any aggressors, anybody that you could confront?
No, I would never. First of all, you think a Nazi would identify himself to me? He'd have to be not only a Nazi, but stupid, too. But I never actually, I've met revisionists. They don't boldly state it, but they speak in code. I don't speak to people that want to convince me that their way is right if they are bigots and racists and anti-Semites. If they want to, if they show an interest on wanting to rethink their way, of course I'll speak to them. But other than that, to speak to someone that spews out hate is just to give them importance. I don't do it. Don't do it. I'll do it when we're discussing if the world is flat. I think we're past that. Yes?
Thank you for your talk. That was wonderful. Do you think that when your family was rounded up to go into the town square, did you think that they had an idea of what was going on?
No. We did not have an idea, and not because we were uninformed. It wasn't the Dark Ages, guys. We were not newcomers to the area. There are grave markings in my little town of 1610. We paid taxes. We served in the army. We were never first-class citizens. It wasn't this age of technology, of course, but it wasn't the Dark Ages. Nevertheless, because of that, the Third Reich went to so much trouble. If they took people into ghettos, they would pre-address postcards if they separated families and send them from this person to keep us down. They would pre-address postcards that would say, "Dear mother or dad, I'm doing well, soon we will be together." That's how psychologically well thought out that was. So no, we didn't know. And you have to understand that, as I said to you in the body of my presentation, we were hated before Hitler, so that often our very own countrymen would turn us in if we tried to escape.
Did your family and you talk once you were all reunited? You never discussed what happened to any of you?
We did not talk. No psychological discussions from my family. You know what? The circumstances were so powerful that there was no need to talk. We were surrounded by death and no hope. And yet we lived. Yes?
Good afternoon, Ms. Geller. I recently read a book, autobiography about Maximilian Kolbe. And in that story, he was one of the saints at Auschwitz. He spoke about small children, and it referenced how small children were asked by their mothers to stand on their tippy toes as they had to walk into the camp, because if they didn't reach a certain level,
there was a measurement, yeah.
Yes. And obviously the fact that you're here is a miracle, and it's wonderful. And I wonder, was that something that you were confronted with?
No,
It broke my heart when I read it.
Listen, it's so hard, and where's my keeper and mentor and dear friend? Vicki? She's not here. Well, anyhow, she'll tell me when we must finish. So, but this is very important. I just need to know when we need to close up. So, but this is so important what you ask. The notion, there are many notions, and it's not anybody's fault. It wasn't done out of any harm, you know, is that as well organized as they were, for example, I don't have a number. They numbered the children in the beginning, but we had to be gathered. We were a dispersed people. There are French Jews, German Jews, Japanese Jews, Spanish Jews, etc. We had to be gathered. There was no technology. That we were not in one place. They stopped putting numbers on the children when they realized that if you're going to perform a hate crime, you kill the children first. If the children don't grow up and reproduce, that people stops being. So they didn't get around to everyone. They didn't get around to everyone. But in the camps, like Auschwitz, for example, where it was strictly a death camp, they did measure the children because they didn't have enough equipment. You think they wanted to do this piecemeal? God forbid what would have happened if they had the technology of today. Yeah. And,
Thank you.
Well, shall we finish with this? Yes.
Ms. Geller, I have heard of people that claim that the Holocaust didn't happen. What do you
That's
think
why
of
I'm
these
here.
people?
Yeah.
What do you think of them?
I think they're anti-Semites and probably racists and bigots and jerks all around. That's what I think of them. Let me just finish. But you see, you have to understand, I'm answering your question, it's a little more. Who are these people? They are professors, they are historians, they are secretaries, anybody can write a book. The problem is that they think the world is stupid. They don't know about Delta. They do not understand that when a Holocaust survivor tells you that there aren't enough Jews to record all the things that have done, that historians writing about this aren't all Jews, and that virtually more than 95% of the facts about the Holocaust come from Nazi records. Why? Because they openly stated they were going to build museums to erase that once was, and all the goodies they collected exist in Czechoslovakia and so on. So they kept the records. We did not. So I don't talk to them either. There are a lot of people I don't talk to, but I'm talking to you. Should I just take these four people, that's it, real quick? Well, they're standing. No.
I actually have two questions. The first one is, have you ever been back to Poland?
No, I have not. Older survivors go back to their place of birth. The memories of Poland are the camps to me.
Have you ever been curious to go back at all?
No, but it doesn't mean you all shouldn't go.
Well, I'm going in the spring.
Good for you.
Also, I was wondering where you stand on your faith as far as in God, or if that's something you've battled with through this.
Important. I didn't have many religious battles. I was so young. I am profoundly tied to my tradition. Guys, I've paid the price. I got the gig. I'm keeping it. But I recommend that you keep yours. I've already paid the price. I am profoundly tied to my tradition. If I thought that this was some kind of a cosmic joke, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning. So that's the answer. These two, and that's it.
I was just wondering if you ever had a chance to meet Anne Frank or Corrie ten Boom.
No, I met Mi Ping, the woman that kept them alive, about 6 years ago. She's quite elderly now. No, I not that I recall. I may have met her, but I don't remember. You're the last one.
Since you were able to see like the Nazi like the people that were shooting people, and you saw the hate in their eyes. I was wondering, what is your opinion of why were they unable to recognize that we're, like, you know, the humanity that they were taking away despite cultural differences and religious differences? Like, what was it?
I wish they did recognize.
I mean,
because there is always, the world is not perfect.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't keep trying to make it and repair it. Yeah. Germany was very vulnerable. And they listened to a man that spoke well, told them they were superior. Come on, who do you hang out with? You hang out with somebody that says you're too tall, you're too pretty, I can't stand you, or someone that says, God, I wish I were just like you. People are indoctrinated that they are superior, that everyone else is beneath them. They're buying because the economy was bad. Again, thank you all so much. Thank you.
Just a moment, please. On behalf of this audience, Elane, I'd like to say that we love and appreciate you more than words can express. I have a small token for you, but it expresses our very great esteem. We love you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please join us at the reception in the Mustang Room.